Have you ever done everything right and watched everything fall apart anyway? Not because of sin, not because of rebellion, not because you stopped trusting God, but because you were, and still, it collapsed. The job, the relationship, the plan you built with prayer, the future you were certain God had confirmed. And in the silence that followed, one question kept coming back. Why would God let this happen? If you've ever asked that question, this is for you. Why this matters more than you think. Most people assume that when things fall apart, something went wrong, that God is angry, that they missed a step, that they're being punished for something they can't even name. But here's what the Bible reveals, and what most Christians never hear. Sometimes God doesn't let things fall apart because something went wrong. He lets things fall apart because something is about to go right. And if you don't understand why, you will misread the most important moment of your life. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." That verse was written to people who had lost everything, not people who had it all together. God spoke those words into ruins, and He's speaking them into yours. There are 3 reasons God lets everything fall apart, and at least one of them is happening in your life right now. The first reason, He's removing what was never meant to stay. This is the one that hurts the most, because what fell apart wasn't bad. It was good. It felt right. It might have even felt like a blessing. But here's the truth that changes everything. Not everything good is meant to be permanent, and sometimes the greatest act of love God can perform is to remove the thing you've been trusting more than Him. John 15:2 says, "He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, He prunes so that it will be even more fruitful." Read that again. He prunes the branches that bear fruit, not the dead ones, the living ones. Because pruning isn't punishment. Pruning is preparation. The relationship that ended, the opportunity that closed, the plan that collapsed. God wasn't punishing you. He was pruning you. And what feels like loss right now is actually the hand of God making room for something your current season couldn't hold. The second reason, He's building something in you that comfort never could. There are things that can only be built in breaking. Patience cannot be built in ease. Faith cannot be built in certainty. Compassion cannot be built without pain. And God, who sees not just where you are, but where He's taking you, knows exactly what you will need for the road ahead. Romans 5:3-4 says, "We also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope." The falling apart is not the end of the story. It is the process. Think of Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, forgotten in prison. At every stage, it looked like God had abandoned him, but God was not absent. God was building, and every layer of loss was adding a layer of character that Joseph would need to lead a nation. What is falling apart in your life right now might be exactly what God is using to build what comes next. The third reason, He's redirecting you towards something you couldn't see from where you were. Sometimes you can't see the better path because the current one is blocking your view. And God, in His mercy, removes the obstacle, not with explanation, not always with warning, but with purpose. Isaiah 43:19 says, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." A new thing, in the wilderness, in the wasteland, not after the wilderness, in it. The falling apart is not a detour from God's plan. In many cases, it is the plan. The door that closed was not the door. The path that ended was not the path. God was redirecting you, not abandoning you. And the new thing He is doing can only begin when the old thing finally lets go. So let me ask you something. The thing that fell apart, have you been grieving it as a loss, or have you been asking God what He's building? Because those are 2 very different postures, and only one of them leads forward. So what do you do when everything falls apart? You don't pretend it doesn't hurt. It does. You don't manufacture peace you don't feel. God doesn't ask for performance. But you do this one thing. You bring the ruins to God, not the cleaned up version, the actual ruins. And you say, I don't understand this, but I trust you with it. That's not weakness. That's the most courageous thing a person can say. Because trusting God in ruins is harder than trusting Him on the mountaintop. And God knows that. He's not looking for perfect faith. He's looking for honest faith. The kind that says, I don't see what you're doing, but I know you are good. Because here's the truth that holds everything together. God has never let anything fall apart in your life without a plan for what comes next. Not once, not ever. The falling apart is not the end. It is the beginning. If this spoke to you, write this in the comments right now. God, I trust you with the ruins, not as a phrase, as a declaration. A choice to stop interpreting the falling apart as abandonment and start receiving it as preparation. Because the God who is letting things fall apart is the same God who makes all things new. And He is not finished with you yet. If this message spoke to your heart, subscribe to Bible Peace. Because here, we don't just seek content, we seek transformation.